Hello, everybody, and welcome back to your weekly fix of the Glory Glory Man United podcast. I'm your host, as always, Kyle Quinn, and joining me today is Dan from Red Devils TV. I think it's your second time on the show, Dan. It's great to have you back on. I love your passion for Man United.
Thank you very much, mate. Thank you for having me as again, and yeah, I'm looking forward to the show.
Yeah, lots to get into. Even though it's an international break, there's United are always making headlines, um, and the arrival of Ineos and Jim Radcliffe as investors in the club seems to be imminent. It could be any moment now. It seems it's inevitable now. Inevitable now. For the last 12 months, we've been wondering if you know new investors or new owners was it going to happen at all. But now we can be safe in the knowledge that it is going to happen because we've already seen the departure of Richard Arnold as CEO. Um, but in a few minutes, I'll get on to the personnel changes that are expected and that are already underway. In the third part of the show, I'm going to talk about the players that we'd like to keep and the players that we feel have a long term future at the club. But for now, I'm going to ask you, Dan, what are your feelings on Ineos as a group coming into Manchester United, and how do you feel about them only having a 25% stake to begin with?
Good question. I think with Ineos, they were always going to be the lead runners. I mean, for Qatar, for the last 2, 3 months now, I didn't have a feeling that Qatar were going to stay, and that's I didn't feel like Qatar were going to take over Manchester United. So with Sergeant Ratcliffe, it's one of them situations. I think he's an all right owner. I mean, Nice right now they're currently top of the league or in the title race in League One. So, and the scouting that he's done for them as well, I think they've done all right. And obviously, they're not my ideal choice. I did want the Sheikh Jazim, but at the end of the day, from what Sergeant Ratcliffe has showed us, and he's come in. He's not even come in yet. It's not even official yet. But the moves and the rumours that we're hearing, it seems that he wants to invest his own money. It seems as well that, with Richard Arnold leaving and possibly John Murtough as well, it seems that Sir Jim wants to make United a better run clubs, which is what we want really, because for the last 18 years, however long it's been under the Glazers, it's been not hell, but the way that they run this club has been, well, it's been crap really. They take dividends out of the club, they don't invest their own money, and since Sir Alex Ferguson has retired, we've been on a constant decline since then. Yeah, we've had a few cups. We won the Europa League under Mourinho. We've won the FA Cup under Van Gaal. Obviously, the Carabao Cup last season with Eric Ten Hag. But if you was to ask a United fan 10 years ago when Sir Alex won the league, you wouldn't expect us not to win the league in the next 10 years. Like, we'd be calling you crazy. But it's one of them situations, but I do think that Sir Jim wants and Ineos as well with their backing that as long as they prove that they want to make United better, then I've not got an issue with it.
Yeah, it does seem to be a positive move. Of course, most fans would say anything but the Glazers is an improvement. Um, but the Glazers are going to be sticking around in some capacity for probably a couple of years at least. It seems like it's going to be a gradual buyout. Initially 25%, and then in a year's time be 50%, and then 75%, and so on until the Glazers disappear. It's how the Glazers bought the club as well. They were minority shareholders at one point, and then they eventually bought the whole club as a leveraged buyout, as we all know, which was somehow not prevented by the Premier League's fit and proper persons test, which Radcliffe has to go through. Um, Now, we're expecting an announcement very shortly, but it will take 6 to 8 weeks for the Premier League to rubber stamp this as they do background checks on Ineos, which is ridiculous considering that they allowed the Glazers through the net. So it's not really worth the paper that it's written on these checks that the Premier League do, albeit that was what 18 years ago. You'd like to think that their checks are more stringent now, but that should be a formality really. And then I think officially they'll have their feet under the table by the 1st of January, and then they can start making changes. But the changes are happening already. Are you just a wee bit disappointed that the Glazers are going to be lingering around like a bad smell for a couple of years anyway.
Yeah, of course I am. I mean, I went to the Glazers out protest against Luton before the game the other week, and it was very frustrating, to be honest, Kyle. And me in the 1958, we were protesting, we were singing the Glazer Out songs and everything, and we'd have fans walking past and recording us and looking at us. And I'll tell you what, mate, majority of these fans were wearing the green and gold scarves, and we were calling at them, we were shouting at them, being like, well, hang on a minute, you're there like wearing the scarf to represent your Glazers out, but you're not involved in the protest. So you're either wearing it for a trend or you don't actually care about the situation. Because if you actually cared, you'd be like all of us and actually chanting and wanting Glazers out. And it's fans like them who claim the Glazers out, but actually don't care. And that's why nothing's changing. So the 1958, I have the utmost respect for, because they actually are trying to get the Glazers out. Like, fans on Twitter and rival fans will say that, well, why can't you just empty the stadium like AC Milan did to get rid of their owners? It's impossible. The amount of how popular Manchester United are, we can't just empty the stadium, because when you empty the stadium, if 75,000 seats are available, I can guarantee you they'll all get snatched up by other fans who want to go to the games. It's very high in demand to be go to Old Trafford nowadays. So I do admit that with the Glazers, obviously I'm not thrilled that they're going to be staying, but realistically, if Sir Jim Ratcliffe is taking over of the sporting control, if he's taking over of the sporting decisions and getting people like Blanc and Paul Mitchell involved with the club, then realistically, we don't really need to hear much from the Glazers anyway. We don't hear much from them. I mean, they do a lot with their American football team. I saw a video on it where he was talking to the players and thanking them all for a great season. When have you ever seen Avram Glazer talk to the players and the staff about a good season? You don't, because for us, we're an investment, and for the American football, that's where their passion lies. But for me as a United fan, I find it frustrating that Glazers are staying, but I knew it was inevitable, and I knew the guitars weren't going to take over. So as long as Sir Jim has taken a bit of that away from him, and hopefully, eventually, will Sir Jim Ratcliffe will eventually take us over fully, then hopefully that's how it goes. But Sir Jim Ratcliffe could just be coming in for the money as well and be just like the Glazers, and it just be another investment for him. But the way I see it is that he will be a competent owner, because realistically, he wouldn't be telling Richard Arnold that his job's under threat. He wouldn't be telling John Murtough his job's under threat if he actually didn't want to make a change.
Yeah, and if we look at how Nice has been run, it's not been run to make a profit. It's been run to win that league. And this season they've made huge progress on that. Because they poached the director of football from Lens, who finished just a point behind PSG in second place last season. They
Yeah.
got a new chief executive as well, and obviously decided to sign more unknown players, diamonds in the rough, rather than the Ross Barkleys and the Bullatellis and the Aaron Ramseys that they were doing, and it wasn't really working for them. But now they've went a different direction, and now they're starting to pull up trees in that league. So that's good to see. You want a new shareholder coming in. You want to see evidence, that he's going to be beneficial to Man United, and the only evidence we have is what he's done at previous clubs or clubs that he currently owns, and Nice, whilst it's taken a while, are starting to be successful in that league. So that's positive. So it doesn't appear to be someone who's there to bleed the club dry of its resources like the Glazers. Yeah, you mentioned there the Glazers. You remember their team, the Buccaneers, won the Super Bowl in 2021, and they were there lifting the trophy. It's very bizarre that in American sport, and you wouldn't see that in the Premier League, and they certainly wouldn't want to either, especially when it comes to the Glazers. The last time we won the Premier League, you wouldn't want to see the Glazers coming to lift the trophy ahead of the players and the staff. It would just be bizarre. Um, but as in America they do things very differently in terms of sport than they do over here. Um, yeah, so I'm excited that there's going to be a massive overhaul, and it's begun already with John Murtough, or not John Murtough, and well, he'll probably go as well. But so far, Richard Arnold is stepping down as chief executive. I think he's jumping before he's perched. Um, I understand that he had a preference for the Qatari ownership and fully backed them. And I understand that when Ineos came to meet him, they weren't impressed by him or how the club has been run. So maybe that's why he backed the Qataris, because he knew the Ineos were going to get rid of him. So he's jumped before he's been pursed. And we're hearing today from Samuel Luckhurst, who covers, he's a chief writer for the MEN, who covers Manchester United, and he says that John Murtough is going to follow out the door. He's been in post since March 21, and yeah, he's been at the club since David Moyes was there in some capacity. And I've just not been a fan of these internal promotions. I want to see United recruit the best in class in the football world to come and run the club and be its director of football and obviously coaches as well. And that's not what they've done. They continue to promote from within under under the Glazer ownership. I mean, Richard Arnold was like best mates with Ed Woodward. They're both
Yeah,
accountants, and that was not a change at all. Uh, and Richard Arnold totally botched the whole Greenwood situation. I mean, he decided that he was going to bring him back, had the statement and all written. It was leaked to the press. Then there was a huge backlash from the fans, and he completely changed his mind and rewrote the statement and all. That was just an
yeah.
absolute debacle. And the, between Murta and Arnold, they've just allowed
Sorry,
Ten
sorry,
Hag.
Kai. Just to interrupt you there as well, is obviously that I saw the United stand. They said quite similar to what you've just said there about Richard Arnold. But one thing that they forgot to mention, and what you forgot to mention as well, is that I know John Murtough hasn't been the best like CEO of Man United, but for me as well is that he's done something what kind of saved us last season, and this is where I'll kind of give him a bit of respect and a bit of like lenience towards how he's like handled himself at United, and that's a Casemiro deal from last season. Because if you remember, we failed the De Jong signing and we couldn't sign him, and then Richard Arnold pulled out the bag and got Casemiro for us. Eric Ten Hag didn't want Casemiro, but Richard Arnold used his contacts and somehow got that deal over the line. So I know that was one moment, but it's not like he's been like Ed Woodward was probably was a lot worse than how Richard Arnold's done. But I do give like for me, Richard Arnold, he was out of his depth, and I just wish him all the best of his future. Is all I have to say. But we do need a proper sporting people in the board. We don't need bankers or wankers, whatever you want to call them. But at the end of the day, I just personally believe that Rich Arnold did the best he could, but he was out of his depth. But I'll let you carry on, mate. Fine. Sorry for interrupting.
Yeah, he would even tell you himself that he's a rugby man.
Yeah,
He said that from the beginning. And he just what he decided to be less hands-on than Woodward, and appointed John Murtough to run the club delegated responsibilities for the football operations to John Murtough, and John Murtough brought in a whole host of people to work under him, including you know uh, a chief negotiator for transfers, a deputy director of football, head of sports science, and all the rest. But I think all of those people will be let go now and replaced, because that's what new investors always do. They always bring in their own people to run the club. The Ineos have just performed an overhaul at Nice, so they'll certainly do it on their arrival at Manchester United. And the fact that that the Glazers are willing to hand over the football operation to a minority shareholder shows that, to me, it seems that's the beginning of the end. The only reason the Glazers are hanging around now is to get maximum profit. Um, and the Qataris, or Sheikh Jazim, were offering $5 million, $5 billion, sorry. Whereas the Ineos are offering obviously initially 1.4 billion dollars for $1.5 billion, sorry, for 25%. Now, if that's the rate that they're getting for each 25%, that would equate to $6 billion. So the Glazers will be making an extra billion, and that's probably the reason why they went for Ineos instead. They're playing the long game and think they can make more money in the long run. So that's that's what we expect them to do. They're not hanging around for football reasons or nostalgia for Manchester United. It's all about how much money they can get, and if they have to wait for that, then they will. Um, but Ineos to me seem to be they're serious about football and want to make Manchester United a success. I think even Radcliffe as an individual, he's been heavily involved in sport for a very long time. In multiple sports like Formula One, sailing, cycling, football, and he's from the Greater Manchester area. And I think Ineos is not really that well known, even though it's such a successful company. So Radcliffe probably wants to leave behind a legacy. Um, and what better legacy in sport would it than bringing Manchester United back to its former glory after over a decade in the doldrums since Alex Ferguson retired. And that's probably what he wants to be remembered for, the man who brought success back to Manchester United. And um, I do get the feeling that it is a genuine, investment, that it's not about profit making. Um, so one of the first changes that's going to happen is a new chief executive, and everybody expects it to be Jean-Claude Blanc, who himself has been heavily involved in sport for a very long time. In football, obviously, he's been the CEO of Juventus. He's been the marketing executive at PSG. But in addition to that, he's managed the Winter Olympics, the Tour de France, the French Open, the Davis Cup. Yeah, so he's a massive background in being a sports executive, and he seems to be the man that's going to take over United. Now, I don't think United have actually had a chief executive from outside of the UK, so this is going to be something with a difference. So, what's your thoughts then on Jean-Claude Blanc coming in, Daniel?
I mean, like you've hit the nail on the head. You've pretty much labelled everything that the guy has been experienced in. I mean, I think that it's like someone offering you, like you've got like your Vauxhall, let's say you've got like a little Vauxhall car, and then someone offers you a Ferrari. That's literally what it's like at this point. And I think anything is better than what we currently have. By any executive could come in, but even if it's for Stockport County in League Two, they could come in their chief executive could come in and be better than what we currently have. But we'll be getting the cherry on the top. We'll be getting one of the best and most well respected figures in the entirety of Europe. I mean, everyone, like you said, he's touched himself in different types of sports. So it's not just football he's well known in. Obviously, he talks about the Tour de France and the other ones you mentioned. So I don't really know too much about Blanc apart from what you've just listed off, but I don't know exactly about how he's ran the clubs and stuff. But I know that he did take Juventus to their peak glory when they were absolutely dominating Serie A. So Blanc, we don't see how impactful the board people are at football clubs, but a well-run football club is clear to see. You look at Man City, you look at Liverpool, you look at Real Madrid, Barcelona. Now, Barcelona have had their financial issues, but they're still a very well football club. They've just overspent in the past, and that's kind of caught up on them in today's situation. But I feel like that United are always taken. We're still feared today because we're still a sleeping giant. And with someone like Blanc, with someone like Ratcliffe coming in, and maybe even someone like Paul Mitchell, maybe even Ralph Rangnick, there's talks that he might return as that sporting director as well. So actually having proper figureheads and people who actually know these roles will turn us into a much better team. I mean, Eric Ten Hag, he turns round in a press conference a few weeks ago and he's asked why can't he play his Ajax style of football? And he turns around and says that I haven't got the correct players for it. Well, not being funny, Eric, you have spent nearly £400 million since you've been here. You have had a lot of investment, but at the end of the day, Eric didn't tell Richard Arnold to go and spend 80 million on Anthony. He didn't go and say, oh, I want this player and this player and this player for this X amount. He can't control the prices. Because what an actual sporting director should be doing is saying, look, Eric, I know you want Anthony, but Ajax wanted £80 million for him. We've found five other inverted left footed right wingers for you that are much similar to Anthony, who will be available for much cheaper. We think that he'd be a much better option for you financially, and then maybe we can get another signing. That's what a correct, that's what someone like Blanc would be doing at Man United, but or what do you call it, or Paul Mitchell. So, but going back to your question on Blanc, I do feel like that it would really evolve us, in my opinion.
Yeah, one of the things that I don't agree with is Ten Hag having a free reign over transfers. You mentioned the 400 million that's been spent in the last three windows, and you can see Ten Hag's hands are all over these transfers because they all have some kind of relationship. They've all, the vast majority of them, Casemiro aside, obviously, have either been managed by Ten Hag in the past or they've played in the Eredivisie in the past. Um, even Mason Mount, Amrabat, I mean, they all have some kind of connection with Dutch football. Um, so, and yeah, that's you point out there that you should have a director of football who has alternatives for the manager, not just better players but better value. Um, we've seen a massive example of that at Liverpool. I know I've mentioned this before. That Jurgen Klopp wanted to sign Julian Brandt from Borussia Dortmund, who he'd worked with before. Um, but the Michael Edwards said no. I can get you a better player, Mo Salah at Roma, and how right Michael Edwards was about that one. And that's what we need to have at our football club. And Ten Hag would be used to that type of management system with working with Mark Overmars at Ajax and Van der Sar as CEO. So there's no way in the modern games that any manager should be signing all the players because you know he's got a lot to do, with coaching the players. He's not going to have time to, scout all the best young players around the world. You should have other people doing that job, and you should have a general manager, run things, run the football operation, and let the coach do the coaching on the training pitch. Gone are the days where you have managers like Sir Alex Ferguson who just ran the whole club. That just doesn't happen anymore. And United need to get with the times. And finally, I think that's going to happen. John Murtough, as is he's obviously a very honest guy. He done a lot of work with the women's team. He recruited all those players when the women's team was set up in 2018, and they got promotion in their first season. So kudos to him for that. But I don't think he was qualified to be United's director of football because he'd never done that job before at any other club. I think you know you can't be a director of football for the first time at Manchester United. You need to have experience elsewhere before you're recruited into that role. And for him just to allow Ten Hag to have a free reign is quite concerning as well. So it seems as if Ineos want to move him on too, which I'm not surprised about. Like we've seen what's happened to Chelsea with Todd Bowley. Almost every person above the manager and including the manager was moved on. So I imagine something similar is going to happen at United. So John Paul Blanc looks nailed on. Seems like a very astute appointment. Now you've touched on already the names that have been linked with the director of football post. Obviously, Paul Mitchell seems to be the one that's linked the strongest. He himself is from the Greater Manchester area as well. Sure he'd love the job. Apparently, he's a fan of the club too. So that would be he's done this job, with about 5 different clubs now. So I'm sure this would be his dream job. Also, Dougie Freeman's been linked to director of football at Crystal Palace. Even Paolo Maldini has been linked, the
Yeah.
legendary Italian defender. And you mentioned Ralph Ranieri coming back. Seems unlikely because he left under a cloud. Um, of course, they brought him in to be the coach when they should have brought him in to be the director of football. And because he was so heavily critical of how the club was being run, that famous press conference at Anfield after the battering of Liverpool, where he said that the club needed open heart surgery and needed 10 new players, and that didn't go down well with the ownership, and he was shipped out the back door as soon as Ten Hag arrived. Um, so I wouldn't mind seeing him coming back in the capacity that he should be should be taken up, not the coach. He should be director of football, but I don't. It seems unlikely that he would leave his job as the Austria manager to come back to a club that got rid of him, albeit under a different ownership. But yeah, there's been a few names that have been linked. Who would be your preference then, Daniel?
For me, I think Blanc and Mitchell would be nailed on. For me, they'd be the perfect duo that I would have. But like I said before, anyone's better than what we currently have. So it could be some complete randomer that we've never really heard of before. It could be a name that's not very big in Europe. But realistically, if we could get someone like Blanc, if we could get someone like Paul Mitchell, I think that would be absolutely brilliant, and it would completely transform us.
Yeah, and someone like Paul Mitchell has a lot of contacts as well that he can bring to the club. He'll have a massive scouting network, um, would allow us to be able to identify, talents that you and I have never heard of. He could bring them to the club for reasonable fees, and they could work out a lot better than some of the expensive signings that we've made. We have wasted so much money. I mean, you touched on 85 million for Anthony, and at the minute that doesn't look like good business at all. I think even there's an Ajax fan on Twitter, or X, what do you want to call it. He's called the European lad. He's very knowledgeable about Ajax. He's a big fan of the club, and even he said at the time. No, he said it. It was only a few weeks ago actually. He said that 100 million euros for Anthony was the worst piece of business in football history, and he's an Ajax fan.
Yeah.
Um, so, like you said, there should have been a director of football there that overruled the manager and said, "Listen, we can get someone better who's a lot cheaper."
What are your thoughts on Anthony? Because for me, I just look at him and be like, he's not even a £40 million player. I mean, yes, last season, yeah, he did all right development wise and stuff, but for the money he came in for, we got absolutely scammed. Like, I mean, it was rightly so. I mean, Ajax didn't need to sell. They did all their transfer business that summer, and United needed a winger, and we came in for Anthony. They asked for, I think it was 90 million, whatever it was, just to take the piss, and we was like, we'll pay you 80, and that was our negotiation tactics. I mean, Anthony is, I mean, he's absolutely diabolical at the moment, and he's just very unprofessional. He doesn't actually offer us anything going forward at the moment. And considering we bought him for so much, he doesn't look like he gives a shit, to be honest. Sorry for my language, but yeah, I find it very frustrating when Anthony plays football because he's going to do that same thing every single time, drop his left shoulder, cut inside and shoot. He doesn't create, he doesn't act, he's not direct. And if he stands off a defender and tries, he'll do his little flicker with his foot and then still tries taking it on around him because he doesn't have any confidence going forward. I mean, when you're buying a player for £80 million, you expect him to be ready and raring to go and are going to make instant impact. And Anthony is a development player. And that's also the frustrating thing about modern day football. Like, so many teams will now buy players for an extra 20, 30, 40 million pounds of their actual valuation because of the potential this player has. And for me, I think that's completely stupid.
Yeah, and Simon there in the comments mentioned Jeremy Doku at Manchester City, a winger that they brought in for a lot less money, who's worked out a lot better. And that's the sort of business that I want to see Manchester United doing from here on in.
The
Not,
thing is with Doku though as well. I mean, City overpaid for him. City paid £60 million, whatever it was, for him. That for me is by the perfect bit of business. I mean, Doku's come in bit of a high price. You probably value him about 30, 40 million. So City are overpaying a little bit, but Doku was always going to work in the Premier League because of how direct he is. Because he actually runs the defenders. He actually takes people on. Anthony doesn't do that. I mean, that is why I also believe players like Jadon Sancho have failed at Manchester United because Sancho isn't direct enough. You don't see him take on defenders, and in the league like the Premier League, you've got to be fast, you've got to be strong, and you've got to be able to bully players off the ball. And Doku's living proof of that. He can play left and right wing. He's confident. Like I said, he's direct. And he's what United need in the wingers. And I think that's why Rashford's also failing, because Rashford isn't being direct. He's overthinking. He's thinking as he does. Like, he's not thinking beforehand. So if he thinks that, oh, Eriksen's not on the ball now, I'm going to make a run. And if I get the ball, I'm going to cut inside after 5 touches and hit it near post. He's not thinking like that. He's thinking, right, Eriksen's got the ball. Eriksen's now just passed to me. What do I do? Right, I'm going to run at the defenders. And he's thinking, he's looking around and stuff. And this is what the difference is between a good player and a great player.
Yeah, I don't think Anthony's ever going to make it at United, to be honest with you. I think he'll have to be written off at some point between now and next summer. I would say definitely if Ten Hag doesn't have a long term future, then isn't going to. I think they come as a pair. And I don't, and I can't see a situation where the next manager would want to have Anthony in the starting 11, given how poor that he's been. Um, it's unbelievable. Anthony's probably a poorest player at the moment, and that's saying something considering how many people are underperforming. Um, yeah, so I'm going to come on to Ten Hag. I want to get your thoughts on that situation. Obviously, last season was a reasonable success. Winning a trophy, getting to another final, finishing third in the Premier League, and it seemed as if it was as good as an opening season as you can have. Given that the previous season was an absolute disaster. So it looked like we're on an upward trajectory, and then all of a sudden this season we've just fallen off a cliff again. Um, Far too many defeats already. I think 9 in all competitions, 5 in the league. I think 3 in the Champions League, and then knocked out of the League Cup. Even the wins that we've had have been very narrow victories. Now the caveat to all this is that the injuries have been absolutely horrendous, and there's been even more injuries since the last game with Hoyland, Ericsson being injured, and then Onana now has got injured on playing for Cameroon,
And
um,
Rashford for England.
and Rashford for England. Yeah, it just there's no let up with these injuries. But it's a big month, I think, coming up for Ten Hag. There's a lot of difficult fixtures in December. He's going to be under pressure with the new investors coming in, and as you will know, every new investors at a football club want to bring in their own man, regardless of how the current manager is doing. So he's essentially on trial, I would say, from here on in. And like I say, we've got to go to Anfield in December. We've got to go to St James's Park. We've got Bayern Munich. Got a huge game in Turkey against Galatasaray. We've got Aston Villa, who are doing very well at the moment. So with a depleted squad, he's under pressure to get results against very tough opponents. And if this December goes really badly for United, and Ineos have their feet under the table by the 1st of January, they might want to make a change. It just depends on how bad it goes. But I think their ideal scenario would be for Ten Hag to be the manager until the end of the season, and then assess the situation from there. But if the next month goes really badly, they might be forced to make a change. So what are your thoughts on it all? Then, how do you would you stick with Ten Hag in the immediate term, or would you be happy to let him go if December goes really badly?
I mean, with me, I back Eric Ten all the way. I remember when the protests were happening and the media were pushing for Pochettino to be United's new manager because he'd just been sacked from PSG and he was probably the best option. And United fans did make a voice. We did say that Eric Ten Hag is the manager we want, and then all of a sudden Eric Ten Hag is then talking to Manchester United. I spoke to a rival fan a few months ago. This was it was actually no, it was a few weeks ago, about a month ago actually. No, I went on a City fan channel after the Derby loss, and this old fan decided to try and give me a bit of stick. It was quite funny actually, and they were saying how they think that the Glazers don't pay attention to the fans, and they chose Eric Ten Hag regardless of United fans protesting for Eric Ten Hag. They, of course, they did it because they wanted all the drama to go away. They wanted us to stop protesting because when they see a protest, they might be laughing at us. They might be like sitting there with their £1,000 whiskey in their hand and they're just there laughing at us. But realistically, they still want all the noise to go away, and that's why I think Eric Ten Hag was brought in as United's manager. And I think he's a very good manager. I mean, he's the quickest manager to reach 50 Premier League wins. Since in his first 50 games, the fastest manager to do so. So he's doing something right now. And considering we had a very good season last season by getting us third, winning the Carabao Cup, and getting to our final in the FA Cup final, we're only 2 points off, believe it or not, in the league from last season. So, it feels like it's been an awful season, and it has been. The football's not been great, but we've been grinding out the results. A few 1-0s here and there against Burnley, against Luton, against Wolves at the start of the season. Obviously, a 2-1 victory against Sheffield United. But all the points look the same on the board. And like you said before, we've had a massive injury crisis. We've had players like Anthony, we've had players like Mount still adjusting to this new system. We've had obviously the Anthony being suspended. We've also had Sancho being the situation with Sancho, the Greenwood situation as well. It's all up in the air, and Eric Ten Hag I still think his arms are tied behind his back. And this is when we go back to the video what we talked about before, that Eric Ten Hag, he shouldn't be a manager having to do everything by himself. This is why you need these board members to take away all this pressure. And Eric Ten Hag's only focus should be on coaching Manchester United and winning Manchester United games. But I think he's having to deal with all these petty dramas as well off the field, which isn't going to be doing any good for the morale of the team and the morale of the club and the morale of the fans as well. But going back to your question, I'd definitely back Eric Ten Hag. But if I was to replace him, I know it's a long shot, but I'd probably go in for De Zerbi of Brighton. I really like him as a manager, and I think that he would be a good fit for us.
Yeah, I would go along with that. He has showed a lot of signs that he is a very competent coach, and he could potentially do well at a bigger club with a proper structure in place. But I wouldn't want to see another manager coming in before Ineos have made all the changes, because so many managers have just got a raw deal working under the Glazers.
Well,
And
here's a question for you, Kyle. Now, you've just said that so many managers have failed, and it's not worked out and stuff. Why have we kept? Why have we gone through several different managers, but the boards all stayed the same? But the managers are the ones who have failed. At some point, you've got to actually wake up and realise that it is the board members and it isn't just the managers, it isn't just the players, it is also upstairs as well to why we're failing.
yeah, absolutely, they're probably the main reason why we're failing. Yeah, but like we've discussed, the changes at board level are going to be happening, very very soon. I mean, it's already underway with Richard Arnold leaving. Um, yeah, but Ten Hag, I feel, is going to be under even more pressure now to get results. I think United are going to have a sensational second half to the season for Ten Hag to be kept on for next season. I feel, because, like I say, new shareholders always bring in their own coach, and especially if the current manager is not getting results, so he's under going to be an enormous pressure now to turn things around. I do think they'll give him a bit of time, and they won't want to just make a change of coach as soon as they arrive. Um, I think they'll change everyone above him first, and then see how he does in the meantime, and then they'll make a call on it. Like I say, ideally they'll want to, you know, keep Ten Hag to the end of the season. But if things spiral and get really bad, they might be forced to make a change mid-season. Now, as I said, United in December, I missed out one of the. We actually got Chelsea as well, so we've got Liverpool and Newcastle away, Galatasaray away, Bayern at home, Chelsea at home, Aston Villa at home. These are these are really difficult games with a depleted squad, and Ten Hag's under pressure to get results. On current form, I couldn't see United winning any of those games, and they could take a real battering at Anfield again, which which I'm extremely worried about. The, and that's my birthday weekend. That could be a pretty depressing birthday. I can tell you. um, Now United were absolutely embarrassed at home to Manchester City. I watched your reaction to that. It was very passionate and entertaining, but it was another very depressing day at Old Trafford against our rivals. And I feel very sorry for you having to go on a Man City fan channel after that. It must have been torturous, having to listen to them gloating after that result.
Oh, yeah, but it wasn't the best, mate. It wasn't the best.
You must have agreed to that a few days beforehand.
I did, yeah, I did. And because the thing is, well, the City fan came onto my channel and I turned around and said right at the end of the video saying, yeah, I'll see you later when United win 3-0. Yeah, it was the other way around. We lost 3-0. So, yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah, it wasn't the best. It wasn't the best. We've also, as well, you missed, we've got West Ham as well the day before Christmas Eve for
Yeah, well,
December as well.
I was only naming the really hard
The
fixtures.
bigger teams, yeah.
Yeah,
But even West Ham, they're really good at the moment. So yeah, it's going to be a tough month, that's for sure.
yeah, 100%. And West Ham, I think that's an away game, and that's one of the easier games, and that's always tough for us as well. Going to that ground, we don't have a particularly great record away to West Ham from memory.
I mean,
Since they
last
moved to
season
that
you had
ground.
last season we had when what was it? Was it Bassoon? No, not Bassoon. Oh, what's he called now? That player where he hit the ball and it went under his armpit and we lost 1-0. Do you remember the game?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, yeah.
Was
It
it
was an
four?
awful
Was it
howler.
4-0? Was it no? What's his name? Uh, oh my god, it's gonna do my head in. He's Algerian. I need to find his name now. But he's Algerian, and I know exactly who he is, but I can't remember his name.
Ben Rama.
That's it, Ben Rama. That's it. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, it was an awful era by David De Gea, of which there was a few towards the end of last season, and I think that kind of, for want of a better phrase, kind of signed his own death warrant there with those eras. I think Ten Hag was willing to keep him on for another season, but
I think he
um,
was always going. I think that the media tried and said that United offered De Gea a new contract. I don't. I think that De Gea and Ten Hag knew that it was going to be the end. So, but he still got Golden Glove for the Premier League. So,
well, yeah, well, I felt there was a possibility that Ten Hag was going to prioritise a new centre back, but with De Gea performing so poorly, he decided to prioritize a new goalkeeper instead, um, which is didn't you don't ideally don't really want to blow so much of your budget on a goalkeeper, but Ten Hag obviously decided that it was necessary, but that is a positive at the moment. Onana started off very badly, but I think he's been one of United's better players in recent weeks. It all started with the Copenhagen game, big save early in the second half, then the penalty save at the end. And since then, he's been very good. I even felt in the derby, it could have been much worse if it wasn't for him. It could have been
yeah,
7-1.
he had some big saves in that game. I mean that save where Haaland had that bullet header and the reflexes were absolutely outstanding from Onana. And we still lost 3-0. But that could have been another 5, 6, 7-0 loss because we weren't going to score. And Onana was just brilliant in that game. I gave him a man of the match, and if like even if like the goals, he couldn't have done anything on him apart from the penalty.
Yeah, and a big save in the Luton game as well.
Yeah.
And it was obviously important because he only won 1-0. Yeah, so he's been performing well, but unfortunately he's got injured and might miss 1 or 2 games. It's not it's not serious apparently, but
I
that
think
means that
I do think as well. Sorry to interrupt. That Biende is a decent backup number two. I do think he's a decent goalkeeper. I have seen him play when he was in Turkey. I've watched a few games of him, and I think that he's all right. So he would be a decent backup. But hopefully Onana is available for Everton this weekend. But I'm not getting my hopes up.
yeah, could be a potential debut for Bayinda at Goodison Park. The good news is that he played for Turkey in Berlin when they beat Germany 3-2 the other day. So at least he's got some match practice under his belt against really good opposition. But he is an unknown quantity to many Manchester United fans. He hasn't even played in the League Cup. Um, so it'll be coming in out of the cold essentially to play in the Premier League if Onana doesn't make it. Would be even bigger blow if Hoyland doesn't make it for this game. That could mean Anthony Martial, playing up front, or Rashford playing up front, which essentially is him playing out of position. So none of that is ideal. Now, one person who will be returning against Everton, it seems, is Luke Shaw, and I think that is absolutely vital, because it provides us with balance and it allows us to get behind teams down the left hand side more. Now, for instance, Lindelof when he's playing left back is never going to offer any overlapping runs or anything of that nature. Um, Dallo is a right footed player, and it's not ideal to have him out there. So Shaw is, an essential component to their team, and I believe the Wan-Bissaka is as well. I thought he was absolutely fantastic in that away game in Copenhagen, which we unfortunately lost due to the red card. Um, but Wan-Bissaka and Shaw start all day long at fullback for me, and I think the alternatives are really, really poor, in my opinion. Would you go along with that?
Yeah, I completely agree. I don't understand the hype around Diogo Dallo. I think that yeah, it was all right, but you think back to when he was on loan at AC Milan in I think it was 2020 or 2021, and he was on loan at AC Milan and United. We drew him in the Europa League, or we drew him in some sort of competition. Anyway, and we gave permission for AC Milan to use Dallo because, I mean, obviously when players are on loan, the club that they actually play for, they have the option whether they can say yes or no for them to play against them. But we said yes to Diogo Dallo. I mean, I know Mourinho was a massive admirer of his, and I just don't see it. I just really don't see it. I think that Dallo he's all right, but like you said before, I think that as a starter, he's not that good as a bench option. I think that yeah, Dallo isn't the best in my opinion, and same with Regulon, same with Lindelof. I mean, what's happened to Malacia? What actually happened to him? He's just disappeared off the face of the earth. So having Luke Shaw back, I think will be absolutely massive for us. I do worry about Luke Shaw because I say that in this system with Ten Hag running up and down the touchline all game, you do seem to start to tire out around the 60th, 70th minute, and that's when you see him start giving away stupid fouls, yellow cards here and there. So as long as he's very reserved and controls himself, I think that we can get Shawberto Carlos back.
uh, yes, I think we need to be careful with this. I think a substitute appearance for the last 10 minutes against Everton, and then maybe 60 minutes in Turkey, and just slowly, build his way up to 90 minutes. He shouldn't play 90 minutes for a couple of weeks. Um, don't want to play too much too soon. Now, we've seen what happened with Johnny Evans. I know he's much older than Shaw. He played like 4 games in 10 days, and then pop, they pulled a muscle, and then he had to come off against Copenhagen because the manager just does not want to play Rafael Varane at the moment. And
What are
looking
your
at his,
thoughts on Johnny Evans? Actually, just to interrupt, but what are your actual thoughts on Johnny Evans? Because for me, I think he's been our best centre back along with Maguire. And in the year 2023, I never thought I'd be saying that out loud. Like the fact that Harry Maguire and Johnny Evans are our best current centre backs and our first team centre backs. It sounds like FIFA. To be honest, that's exactly what it sounds like.
yeah, I think Evans and Maguire have done really well for the most part. They came on stuck against Manchester City because that was a level up from the other teams. When you're against Burnley, Sheffield United, Luton, Fulham, you know Johnny and Harry are going to. They're not going to look out of place
Yeah,
against teams in the bottom half of the league. They're more than a match for those forwards, but when they're playing against Holland, Phil Foden, Bernardo Silva, it's too much for them.
yeah.
But yeah, they're very competent when it comes to playing against the lesser teams. But I would just worry about them whenever we play Liverpool or Newcastle or Chelsea or Bayern Munich. But yeah, they're I suppose you could say they're decent backups, but the they shouldn't be still shouldn't be first choice because going into big games, it is a worry. And we did see them get exposed against Man City. But yeah, they've done really well. And funny enough, Maguire looks to be the centre back that might stay now, and obviously Martinez will stay. But you'd think, but other than that, you think Maguire will be the one to stay. And we thought for all the world he was going to go in the summer. For me, Varane will definitely go to Saudi Arabia in the summer. I think Casemiro will probably follow him.
I
Um,
mean, I just to interrupt you there. I don't think he will. I think Varane will go, but there's certain rumours going on in Germany that Bayern Munich are watching Raphael Varane. Now, obviously, this is a massive coincidence. It's only a report, but a certain Matthias de Ligt is also unhappy at Bayern Munich. Maybe there's a swap deal there that we can do. I mean, Matthias de Ligt to United, ex Ajax graduate, Eric Tanag player. Maybe we should be all over that. Help me connect the dots here, Kyle. I think that should be. I think that would be a very interesting deal if we could make it, because I think Varane as well is that teams can't rely on him being that first choice centre back anymore, and I think that's why Eric Tanag is not punishing him but putting him on the sidelines, because Eric Tanag wants an official and consistent starting 11. But then we're getting injuries left, right, and centre. That's why Martial's been dropped out of the team. That's why I think Varane's also been dropped out of the team. I don't think it's due to a feud or an argument. I think it's just because Varane will play 4 or 5 games for us, and then he'll look exhausted and we have to drop him. And I think with someone like Maguire, someone like Evans, they will give you that 90 minutes week in, week out. I mean, I know Evans is now injured, but you know what? This is where I think it comes back to with Lindelof and Maguire. They hardly get injured, and they're very consistent with their fitness. And I think that's why Varane does not really play, because Eric Tanag, with the injury drama that we've got right now, injury crisis that we've got right now, I think that Eric Tanag can't afford any more injuries.
yeah, yeah. So I think that would be an interesting one now if he went to Bayern, because Bayern notoriously have sold us, uh, injury-prone players in recent years. If we could get our own back by selling them an injury-prone player, I'd be delighted about that. Um, so I think Varane will be moved on. Lindelof could be moved on as well because it's coming to the end of his contract. At in June now, it's going to take him into the plus one. If that is indeed activated, if not, he could be released on a free. Johnny Evans, I don't think will play beyond the season given his age. Um, so Maguire could actually be the one that stays. So you'd
I mean,
expect Martinez.
Maguire's contract's up at the end of this season as well. He obviously has the extension as well, but his ends in the summer as well.
Yeah, did Maguire not get a 6-year contract when he signed in 2019? So in the summer that would take him to 5. Yeah, so we think he'd have one more.
I thought it was 5+1. That's what I thought it was.
Well, I think it was 6, but either way, it is 6. It's a very long contract that he got. It's very rare United would hand out a 6-year contract, though. Yeah, so Maguire could stay as backup. I do, in my opinion, they'd need to sign 2 centre halves. Now you mentioned De Ligt. I mean, if Ten Hag's still around in the summer, and De Ligt's unhappy with not with his playing time at Bayern Munich, is it Upper Meccano and Kim and Jae who start for Bayern? I think certainly did
Yeah,
against us. So maybe
yeah.
that's why he's unhappy. So it would be an option there. But another interesting centre back option is the French centre half at Nice, Jean Claire Toribo, who starred for Nice this season, in the progression towards the top of Ligue 1. And obviously last season he had a really good season as well. He's now starting for France. And with Ineos being the owners of Nice, you can easily connect the dots there as well, and you can see him ending up at Old Trafford. It'd be a very easy deal to do for United. It's a bit like swapping a player from Watford to Udinese or from Red Bull Salzburg to Red Bull Leipzig. It'd be a very easy deal to do. And he looks to be a very, very promising young centre half. No, he's not too young. He's 23, so he's not raw or anything. He's had plenty of experience, and now he's
He,
playing at
he
national.
turns 24 next month as well.
Yeah, so he looks. That's a very good age. When we signed Martinez, he was 24. Um, you don't want someone who's too young a centre back, unless they're absolutely top quality. Like Varane was when he went to Real Madrid, and you don't want someone who's too old because you're not going to get many years out of them. So 24 is a really good age, I feel, especially for a centre half. So he'll be a really good option as well, and hopefully we can get that done. It seems like it would be an easy piece of business to do. Um, yeah, and I'm just excited about the so many changes happening above the manager. And it's been a long time coming. Competent people in these roles. It just will feel really strange. Because we're so used to charlatans at Manchester United. People who just accountants and bankers and wankers, as you call them. Working in these roles. Yeah, so it'll be a real positive change. So I can see massive changes in the playing staff over the course of the next 12 to 18 months. So my question to you is, which players would you keep beyond the season that are in the current squad? How many of them would you keep, and give me their names, please?
Are we talking about starting 11 or just people in the squad in general?
It, the entire squad, yeah.
The entire squad, right? Okay. Right. I'll quickly write down the play that comes to my mind. So, Onana, keep. I'd definitely keep Onana. Wan-Bissaka, keep. Um, Dalot, I'd sell. Centre backs, Lindelof, I'd sell. Evans, I'd let retire. Maguire, keep this form up. I have no issue with him being a rotation option, so I keep him based on this current form. But I know Maguire's not a proper solution to our future. But if West Ham went through that deal this season, in the summer, sorry, and Maguire was playing like this for them, £40 million seemed like a bargain with the way he's currently playing. He's definitely playing like he's 50, 60 million at the moment. But I'd keep Maguire only based on how he's currently playing. Um, Varane, I would sell if I had the opportunity. I just think that he's too injury prone. I think he is a brilliant player. Last season, he proved to be our best centre back, but it was just the injuries, and he's just too inconsistent with his fitness. Martinez, I'd keep all day. And Martinez is one of my favourite players, and I just think that this injury has been a massive injury and a massive setback. And playing him at the start of the season and putting him on antibiotics just to get him through the games was disgraceful management from the people and the doctors and the Eric Tanag who actually let him carry on playing and just told him to just take his medicine and he'll be fine. Like it's like when when you fall over and your dad's like, "Oh, just scrape it off, you'll be all right," but you're there pissing blood out your arm and stuff. But Luke Shaw, I'd keep. I think that Luke Shaw, his injuries are also starting to worry me. He does seem to have a period out every single season at some point. So I wouldn't sell Shaw, but I would look at getting a very good left back to challenge him. Malacia, I don't know what's happened with him, so that's unknown. Regulon, I'd let him go back to Spurs, so sell if that's the answer. Casemiro, I would keep, but I would also bring in someone that will challenge him, someone like a Palhinha from Fulham. I'm a massive admirer of Palhinha, Premier League proven, an absolute warrior, and absolute brilliant in every single department. And I think that also like I said, Premier League proven, so we wouldn't be taking much of a gamble. Amrabat, it's a tough one with Amrabat. If we're keeping Casemiro and we sign someone like Polina, then I would sell Amrabat or let him go back to Fiorentina. McTominay, um, yeah, it's an hard one. I like Scott. I do like Scott, and I do think he's a good player. But bench, I'd say with McTominay, I would bench him, and I would use him as a rotation option. Ericsson, I'd sell. I do like Ericsson, but again, age, injured again. He was injured for a good portion last season. The quality is there, and probably one of our best passers in the team. He's probably our best creative player, and we would be missing him a lot. But I just think that he can't play in this eight role that Eric Ten Hag likes to play him in. So for me, I would sell Ericsson. Fernandez, I'd keep. Who else am I missing out in the midfield? Van der Beek, I'd sell. He's got to go. I feel sorry for Van der Beek, but it just hasn't worked out. It's not worked out under 3 different managers now. I'd sell Van der Beek. I do like Van der
Palestri.
Beek though. I was
Palestri.
going to get onto the wingers now, and yeah, with Palestra, I'd keep Palestra. I think he's our best winger, and people look at me stupid like that, but I think that what do you want from your winger? Do you want to score goals? Do you want him to be creative? Palestra is all that in one. Palestra creates. Palestra runs for you. If you ask him to run for 90 minutes, he'll run for 90 minutes. You ask him to run for 10 minutes, he'll do that. If you ask him to track back and play it right back, he'll do it for you. That's what you want from your wingers. You want an absolute workhorse. And people might be thinking he's not really done it in a United shirt. Then why is he called up to every single international break with Uruguay and starting on the right wing every single game for him, like passing it to Darwin Núñez, Luis Suarez and Cavani sing his praises. You know, Palestra is a very good talent. I rate him more than Garnacho. I love Palestra, but for some reason he's just not been given a chance. Sancho, I'd sell Sancho. Antony, I'd normally give players 3 years to prove me wrong, but I'd cash in with Antony. I'd sell him for whatever we can. I don't like him. I did like him last season, but I want Anthony gone. I don't want Anthony at the football club anymore. What really did what the nail in the coffin for me, and what the straw that broke the camel's back for me was when he wasn't played against City, and then he was brought on to make a difference or just to try and get a goal back so he didn't look as embarrassing, and he just pretty much tried fighting Doku and the other City players, and it was just very unprofessional in my opinion. I think that fans like to moan about Bruno Fernandes being petulant, but come on, Anthony's worse than Bruno Fernandes. Bruno Fernandes might moan, he might throw his arms in the air and stuff, but Anthony just looks like he wants to kill people half the time. He's an absolute psychopath. Anthony, I would sell. I don't know if I said Fernandes, but Bruno Fernandes I also would keep. Strikers, we've only got 2. I mean, Hoyland I'd keep, and Martial I'd sell, and then left wing, Rashford. That's an hard one. I didn't even think about Rashford. That's an hard one. I didn't think about Rashford. See, because the thing is that he had such a good season last season, and it's just, I mean, I explained it before. I think he's massively overthinking and not actually being direct enough. I'd give him till the end of the season. Right now, I'd keep him because we saw the quality last season with Rashford. But if this form continues for the rest of the season, then I would look at moving him on maybe. And Alejandro Garnacho, and I also say it out loud, Mason Greenwood, I'd keep.
Okay, and what about Kobe Manu? I think that's an obvious one.
Oh yeah, I forgot about I'd keep Toby all day. I keep Kobe all day.
And Hannibal Mabry.
I like Hannibal. I think that he's a brilliant workhorse, but the guy I'd loan Hannibal. I think that he needs Premier League experience. I think he needs to go to a relegation team somewhere where he's going to be doing a lot of running, get used to that. Because the thing is that he played in the starting 11 for us for 3-4 games in a row, and then Eric Ten Hag dropped him. He's not been in the side since the Newcastle loss, which he should have been sent off for. I feel like that Hannibal is a very decent player, and he has a lot of good traits, but the composure, the discipline, I don't think it's there. So I would loan him out and try and get him that experience that he needs, because otherwise he won't succeed at United. And I think that you need them type of players in your squad, your workhorses that will run for 90 minutes and will constantly press.
Okay, so here's my thoughts. Onana, I would keep. Um, Lindelof, I would sell. Amrabat, I wouldn't extend his loan on current form. I wouldn't make it a permanent deal. And I couldn't see Ineos, paying the 25 million for him, based on what we've seen so far. Um, Harry Maguire on current form, he would be a good squad option. Um, Lissandro Martinez, keep obviously. Mason Mount, that yeah, you'd have to keep him because he hasn't been there long enough. You have to give him a chance. Bruno an obvious keep, Martial an obvious sell. Uh, Rashford, if he continued to play like this till the end of the season, you'd have to, you know, uh, if PSG were willing to offer good money for him, you'd have to consider it.
Yeah,
But if he was able to get back to the form of last season, he can seduce you again, and then you change your mind and say, let's keep him. It just depends on which Rashford is there at a particular moment in time. Last season he was an obvious keep. This season you're like, don't know. But I'll just say keep for now. Hoyland obviously keep. Malassi I would sell. Ericsson I would sell coming towards the end of his career. Um, Regulon, no, I would send him back to Tottenham. Ahmed Diallo, that's a difficult one.
oh,
He's been,
I forgot about Diallo. Yeah,
um, I think, I like to get a look at him before I make my decision. It's a tough one.
yeah,
Um, he has been injured for all season, really injured in pre-season, just like Kobe. So I like to get a look at him before I make my mind up. Um, yeah, I'm going to say on the fence on that one. Garnacho would be keep. Casemiro would be sell. Which I never thought I would say, if you asked me back in May. But I just come to something that Jack said here in the comments. He said he can't handle the pace of the Premier League, and that has been so obvious this season. He looks like a man who's physically declining, and you ever see him when he lunges in for a challenge and he doesn't get the ball or the man, and you're like, oh, this is embarrassing.
yeah,
Um, yeah, he needs to significantly improve, otherwise we might as well sell him to one of the Saudi clubs in the summer. But it looks like we've signed him, at the wrong end of his career. So at the moment, I would say sell on that one, and get someone younger in. Varane, I would sell for largely the same reason. Diallo, Diogo Dallo, I would sell. I do not rate that guy at all. I think he's awful. I think the only good period he had in his United career was from the beginning of last season to the World Cup. I thought he was decent, but outside of
yeah.
that, I don't think he's been good at all. Defensively,
What
he's
what do you
woeful.
want to, what do you think of his goal against Sheffield United? Like, do you think it was a moment of brilliance, or do you think that it's something that would continue? Because I think that he scored a similar goal against Borussia Dortmund in pre-season, and he did it against Sheffield United. He does like that long, like 30-yard, 25-yard, like curl it into the far post corner like type goal. But there's been times as well where he's hit it to Rosette. Like, do you know what I mean?
Um, I think it's a decent strike, but I also think the keeper should have saved it. If I'm being brutally honest about it, better keeper probably would have kept that out. Um,
I
you know,
mean, the commentator said that Dalot was as surprised as the keeper that he went in. So
yeah, um, yeah. You said about his shots that are quite often off target. The most famous one of those was the one against PSG, which led to the VAR decision that led to Rashford scoring the penalty that put PSG out and us through the quarterfinals and got Solskjaer the job on a permanent basis. But that Dallo strike was
I
going
thought it
miles
was
over the
Fred. I
crossbar.
thought it was Fred. Fred who got it as a handball. It might have been Dalot. I'm not too sure. I have to look back
No,
at it.
yeah, it was Dallo, I think. Yeah, it was going over the bar, and Kimpembe put his hand in the air, and the rest is history.
Yeah.
But yeah, Dallo is a definite sell for me. Anthony, another definite sell. Just whatever money we can get for him, let's just move him on. It's not going to be anywhere near what we paid for him, and it wouldn't even be half that. But yeah, I just don't like the player at all.
We
Like
would honestly, I'll say it now. We would be lucky if we got 30 million for Anthony. I swear
yeah,
to God, we would be lucky if we got 30 million for him.
yeah, that would be a good deal on current form. Yeah, and I just you mentioned there how he lost his head against Man City. He did so against Brighton last season as well. He's very lucky
Yeah,
not to be sent off in his career so far.
yeah.
He's had
How
more.
has he not been sent off yet? How has he not been sent off yet?
He has more yellow cards than goals for United. That is how poor he's been. Um,
It says it all. It says it all. Like you don't even need to say anything else. Like if you was to say to me one stat, like how's Anthony done at United? Just be he's got more yellow cards than goals. How many is that? 8, 4. Like oh my God, is that bad? Like
yeah, I
oh
think
God,
it's 8 goals and 10 yellow cards, which is a
God.
damning statistic. Um, Luke Shaw, I would keep. Onana, I think I've already said that. Keep. Yeah, Jane Sancho, sell. Yeah, whether he makes up with Ten Hag or not, which is obviously probably not going to happen. Um, he has not done anything since he came to Manchester United, and that's 2.5 years ago. So
Yeah,
that's another flop for me. Plastry, yeah, definitely keep him. I'm like you. I want to see him play more. I mean, I know Fernandez scored the goal against Fulham, but it was Plastry that won us the game. Um,
100%.
with his tenacity, and then the assist for Bruno. I was amazed that he was the first substitution against Fulham because he very rarely is under Ten Hag. And I would like to see more of him. For sure, and he is a very traditional winger. Um,
Like one of the first videos I did when I started doing YouTube was about Palestra and about how he's a diamond in the rough and how he would probably, arguably, I would say Palestri walks into, I'd say 60, 70% of the teams in the Premier League. I think he walks right into their teams. I just don't know why he's not playing more because Garnacho's had all this time, and I think Garnacho's quite shit, to be honest. I think that the hype around him isn't good. I mean, because this is what happened. We went from Mason Greenwood, who was a generational talent, whether you want to say it or not, because of the ongoing situation with what happened with him and his girlfriend. But then we went from Mason Greenwood to then Anthony Elanga, who was all right, but was just rushed and needed more time, and we just expected too much of Elanga. And then Alejandro Garnacho comes out of nowhere, and I don't rate Garnacho. He's got the name. He's played with Messi. He's played with Ronaldo. Ronaldo's his idol. It's a nice little like Cinderella story, but with Garnacho, I personally would loan him out. Like Garnacho, I would keep Garnacho. I'm not saying I wouldn't sell him, but I feel like that he's not as good as people actually make out.
yeah, there's certainly an argument to be made that he very rarely performs when he starts games. But he's very good as an impact sub.
Yeah,
Um, been very disappointing this season now, I have to admit. I think he's only scored 1 goal, and that was in the League Cup against Crystal Palace. Some of
yeah.
his finishing has been woeful. Um,
It's not. It's not.
eh,
But this is the thing that this is what I was saying to you before about Palestra. That if you want goals or assists or just your all-round play, Palestra is your man because Garnacho, he has that poacher's instinct. He does like to try and score a goal. He does cut inside. He is very fast and very tenacious and does at least track back and help with the press. But I just think again he's way too inconsistent himself. And personally, I do think he's a decent player, but I just don't rate him at the same time.
yeah, and I think he's another one of those wingers who wants to cut in and score himself, whereas Pellistri would be more beneficial to Hoyland.
Yeah,
Because he'd be providing him with crosses and cutbacks. Pellestri's more likely to get an assist on a goal, and that's not a bad thing. Um, so yeah, keep Pelestri. One Bissaka, definitely keep him. Van der Beek is an obvious sell. Donny Evans, I agree, should retire at the end of the season. Menu, I would keep. Scott McTominay is another difficult one, like you say. Um, I'm happy with either selling them for good money or keeping them as a squad option. Um, Mabry, I think, is a good player, but maybe not a Manchester United title winning player. I'm not sure he can reach that level, but I do think he would have a good career elsewhere. So I would sell him for the right money, probably. Hannibal Mabry. Yeah, and I think that is all of them.
Yeah,
Um,
I think you've touched on the majority of them there. Yeah,
yeah, so actually, I think it would keep probably more than I thought I would.
yeah.
I, to be honest, going in, I thought it was only going to be about
Do you not
you
think
know
it's a bit? Do you not think it's a bit concerning how the majority of the players that we mentioned were these big name players and the big players that are supposed to be the one who win us games and the ones that are supposed to make the difference in the team, but we're sat here at both in agreement saying that we would sell majority of them because they're just not cutting out at the moment.
Yeah, we're actually saying we would keep the younger players and
Yeah,
sell the more experienced, the more decorated players. But that's kind of been uh, a, a theme at United since 2013, where we sign all these big names and then they just don't do it, or they do it for a year and then they decline.
yeah,
Um, there's been so many of them, and I suppose you could now probably add Casemiro and Varane to that list of players who are just um, been signed at the wrong stage of their career and have only been able to perform for a year at the most, and then they're on the way down. So yeah, we've said that we get rid of a lot of experienced players there, and a lot of expensive players. The players we've named, a lot of the players we named that we'd keep didn't cost anything or very little. Uh, where we've said we get rid of a lot of expensive players, like Anthony being one of the most obvious ones. Um, yeah, it's a squad that's probably going to see a lot of turnover in the next 12 to 18 months. I feel because I'm sure the new sporting department will want to move in a different direction,
yeah,
and I think it's important that we're not signing players for one specific manager. We're signing players for a project, and the manager is just one component of that project. And it doesn't, like at Brighton, for example, and the director of football and the scouting team there, they're bringing in players for their project, and then they just bring in a manager who fits that project. That's what we should be doing. Um, because
yeah,
what we've been doing in the last 10 years is signing players for a specific manager, and then after, like, now we have a mismatch of players that have been signed under five different coaches, um, and they're all different. Those coaches all have different styles, so we just have like 30 players, um, and that have been signed by five different coaches, and they have different skill sets, and they're just we want to see more of a project at Old Trafford that the director of football is in charge of, and then they just get in a coach that fits that system. And then if you have
yeah,
to sack the coach, then you can bring in another similar one, that can be a smooth transition. But United have just got it all wrong. I mean, we've still got Mourinho players, Van Hal players, Solskjaer players in our squad.
yeah.
Until recently, we still had Sir Alex players in the squad. Um, I think De Gea and Jones might have been the last of those. Um, yeah, the mismatch at United has been a total mess, but it does seem like change is on the horizon, and positive change at that, and it's been a long time coming. Um, so how are you feeling about the Everton game? I f- I feel as if Everton are going to be heavily motivated now after the 10-point deduction. They probably, I can imagine Sean Dyche is going to use the old siege mentality, to motivate the players. And they notoriously always give United a good game when they come to Goodison. We've had a lot of good results there and bad results there. It's hard to know what you're going to get. And a depleted, injury hit United squad might struggle in this game, and we're really, really struggling to score goals at the minute. So it could be a really tricky fixture. How do you see it going, Daniel?
I think it'll be hard to break down Everton. Sean Dyche does set up really well. Obviously, Clive Lewin, he's back to scoring goals again. Onana completely bosses the midfield for Everton. that Braithwaite, that young centre half. I mean, he's an absolute freak. I mean, I think he's what 20 years old. The guy's 6'5". He's fucking massive, and he's not like he's just tall. He's fast. He's strong. Everton have got a proper like good player there. By the age he is, I think it might be it might be 21 actually, but for the age he is, I think that standing at 6'5", like Everton could, if people wanted to, if people wanted like to sign Braithwaite, Everton could demand easy 50 million for him like that because he's got the Premier League experience, and he's got a lot of potential, and I definitely see him as England's centre back at some point. But yeah, I do feel like that United could win. Depends if Hoyland's available, but Hoyland's still not scored in the Premier League. But based off what we've currently got, Biendi's in net, if Martial starts up front, for me, I personally believe that United could win 1-0, maybe win 2-1, maybe goals like that. I do think we can win, but it just really depends on will Everton be up for it. They've hardly got any injuries. Like you said, with the 10 points reduction, they'll be heavily motivated. So, yeah, I think it'll be a very tough game, but every game's a tough game for United at the moment.
I just want to come to a point that Jack has made there. He wants us to discuss why United have so many injuries, and whilst
We
I don't.
don't know. It's up in the air. It's out of the ordinary. We honestly don't know. It's one of them ones where I personally believe it's players that have been overrun from last season. I mean, we had the World Cup last season, mid-season. These extra 10, 15 minutes that are being added on to games because of VAR, that's not going to be taken. That's probably going to be the cause for injuring players. And some players just might be unlucky and get serious injuries. I mean, look at Martinez last season, Europa League. He was dribbling with the ball, and out of nowhere, he just goes down like he's been shot because his foot's just like decided to, like, with the ACL just decides to go. Injuries do happen in football, and it's not just happening to United. You look at Newcastle, you look at Real Madrid. It's not just United who've got massive injury crises at the moment.
Yeah, it's impossible for us to know, but I have heard that supposedly Ten Hag has the players doing a lot of running, double sessions, um, and Pochettino apparently does the same, and they've experienced a lot of injuries. Whereas from week to week, apparently the likes of De Zerbi and Guardiola spend most of their time doing tactical work and working on their next opponents and how they're going to counteract them, not doing lots and lots of running. And if that's true, that might explain why we have a lot of injuries, that the players have simply been run into the ground. We're seeing a lot of muscle tears as a result. I do know we experienced quite a similar situation under Van Gaal, another Dutch coach, who did double sessions and a lot of running. So maybe if that's true, then my advice to Ten Hag would be to kind of cool down the running and do more tactical work. But I don't know if that's the case for certain. It's just something that I've heard, through listening to podcasts and reading journalist stories. But yeah, Everton. Yeah, I think it's going to be it's going to be a tough one. Um, I'm going to try and be optimistic and say United will win this one 2-1. But I think I'm just saying that because I'm biased. If I was looking at this from a neutral point of view, I would probably be saying either a draw or an Everton win. To be honest
They,
with
they
you.
won't they won't beat us. It'll be a draw at best if they was to get a point, in my opinion. Maybe a 1-1, 2-2 maybe, but I don't see Everton beating us. I just feel like that it's United, even though we've got the injury crisis and stuff, I still feel like our quality for what we do have available is much better than what Everton's have to offer. They do have a few dark horses, they do have a few diamonds in the rough, players that can cause us issues, but I feel like United will get the win. But if it's a bad day at the office, then I personally believe that maybe a draw at best for Everton, but I don't see him beating us.
Well, Everton performed really well in their last game away to Palace and won 3-2, which a lot of people didn't expect. But when you look at the table, they've only had 4 wins in the Premier League this season, and they've had 6 defeats. So they can't be that good. I suppose they're only second bottom now because of the points deduction. I think they're 13th before that. But yeah, 4 wins all season doesn't scream to me that's someone that we should be afraid of. But this is probably their second biggest home game of the season, behind whenever Liverpool come to town. But anytime United come to Goodison, they're always well up for it. The crowd are up for it. But we have won. I think we've won our last 3 away games, so we are all maybe building up a wee bit of form away from home. So hopefully we can get over the line here. When it comes to most away games, I'm not even at Old Trafford. I'm looking for a performance and some goals. When it comes to away games, by and large, I'm just happy with the result. So I just hopefully we can sneak over the line in this one and get a 2-1 victory. What I really, really want to see is Hoyland get his first Premier League goal. Please, let this hoodoo come to an end. Because he's been sensational in the Champions League, but just can't translate it into the Premier League. And I know service is an issue. Do you think there's any other reason as to why he's not scored in the Premier League?
I think it's the difference in the league. I think it's the fact that players are going to mark him a lot more. He won't get the space that he does in the Champions League. And I think that that's why he's failing. And plus, United, we just struggle to create at the moment. And in the Champions League, we seem to be quite more relaxed. We seem to be a lot more confident, and we do get a lot more space against the opposition sides. I mean, even when we played Bayern Munich, we lost 4-3. We still scored 3 goals against probably one of the favourites to win the competition. I know they didn't get out of third gear, but I still believe that they're a very decent team. But yeah, I think with Hoyland, he's come in. He was never supposed to be the main striker. He was always supposed to be the apprentice to the more experienced striker. Ten Hag wanted a Harry Kane or a Victor Osimhen, and Rasmus Højlund was supposed to learn off them and get better as he goes on and has a few games. He wasn't expected to be the main striker, but all this pressure is being put on him. Again, another player we've massively overspent on. So I feel like if we bought him for 30, 40 million, we wouldn't be talking about him being a flop, or we wouldn't be talking about him not doing well. We would just be saying he's to give him time to adjust to the Premier League. And that's what I'm still going for, because it's, well, like I said before, nowadays teams pay for the potential of a player. They don't pay for the actual quality of the player. Right now, I'm ready to go.
Yeah, it's not really fair on him, for him to be relied upon to get goals for Manchester United at this stage of his career, but that's the way it is, for the reasons you mentioned. But just on that, would you sign Ivan Toney in January if we got the chance?
Absolutely.
Just a
I
one word
mean, and
answer that was always needed.
that's all that's needed. I mean, Ivan Toney, for me, one of the probably top 5, top 10 strikers in the Premier League. No doubt, I'd put him up there as one of the best. I mean, him. I mean, apart from Haaland, your Darwin Núñez, maybe Isak, and your Ollie Watkins, I'd say he's up there for probably about 7th, maybe 6th place. I do really rate him, and his injury record for Brentford is practically non-existent. He's always ready, fit, and ready to go. It's just a shame that he's an Arsenal and Liverpool fan. So, I don't think that it'd be his dream to join Man United, but it depends, because Brentford, would they want to sell him? That's the question. Would they rather wait till the summer and get a big money move for him? Because they have every right to ask 60 to 80 million for him. You won't get him for about 40 million pounds. He's English. He's proven. He's a very good striker. They could ask for as much money as they want to for him.
Yeah, they probably can, but I'm hoping that his value has diminished because he's been suspended for so long,
He's
by the
still
Premier
played with
League.
him though. He's still played. He's still been training with him and stuff. He's just not been playing games.
Yeah, I think that he scored in a behind closed doors friendly this week,
Yeah,
which Romeo Beckham also played in, for Brentford. With the media just had to mention that one as well.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that Ivan Toney would start for about 18 out of the 20 teams in the Premier League. So if that's the case, then he's it's an easy choice to make. You get him in, and if you have to pay 80 million, then so be it. You have a ready-made striker there, who would guarantee you goals in the Premier League. So I would get that deal done if we can do it. Well,
Yeah.
I see what Jack thinks of it here. He says Ivan Tony's advantage is that you know the final score before the match starts.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Um, so we shall wrap it up there. And we've talked for an hour and a half, would you believe? Yeah, even though United haven't played for a week and they won't be playing for another week, we've still found so much to talk about. I mean, there's never any shortage of drama surrounding Manchester United. So, everyone, please check out the link of Dan's YouTube channel, Red Devils TV. It's in the description. If you don't know about it already, smash a like on the video, get more of your comments in, and please subscribe to my channel. And once again, Dan, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on.
No worries. Thank you for having me. And everyone, make sure you go subscribe to Kyle's channel. He's doing amazing things. And yeah, thank you for having me once again.
All right, until next time.
Take care.